Good day, and welcome to another AI podcast at digitVIEW.
Where innovation meets insight, machine learning to responsible AI.
Okay, if I asked you to name the one thing that connects, say, the fiery birth of the universe, the beating of your own heart, the way we structure language, and even how we train artificial intelligence, well, you'd probably struggle for an answer.
It sounds impossible, right? They seem completely unrelated.
Exactly. But after going through this huge body of research, and we're talking about physics, deep biology, geopolitics, computation, the conclusion is just. It's unavoidable. It's all about energy.
It really is. Energy is the fundamental universal engine. It's the currency that dictates every single interaction. It organizes every structure. And, at the end of the day, it defines existence itself.
And that's our mission today. We're doing a true deep dive, really tailored for you, to traverse all these disciplines that almost never speak to one another. We're going from the Big Bang to the economics of global conflict, and then finally to the really surprising energetic cost of thought itself. We're pulling out the most critical insights to give you this comprehensive shortcut to connecting all these dots.
And by the end of this, you won't just know what energy is in, the textbook sense. You'll understand how it governs everything at every single scale. You'll be able to see the same thermodynamic principles at work in a single cell and in a massive geopolitical crisis.
That holistic view is really what we're after.
It's invaluable.
Okay, let's unpack this. And I think we have to start with the biggest possible energy event we can even conceive of, the dawn of the cosmos. When you really listen to how physicists talk about cosmology, what they're really doing is telling the origin story of energy.
That's a great way to put it. The entire narrative of the universe is written in this language of energy conversion and transformation. It sets the non-negotiable physical rules for everything that comes after.
So where do we start? The Big Bang itself it's a bit of a mystery, right?
It is. We start with the standard cosmological model, which picks up just a fraction of a second after. The universe emerges from this state of just incomprehensible density and temperature. This was a realm where the laws of physics as we know them today hadn't quite settled yet. So the absolute earliest moment we can reliably talk about is what's called the inflationary epoch.
And that's that period of just ridiculously rapid exponential expansion.
Mind-bogglingly rapid, yes. We're talking about a point around 10 to the minus 36 seconds after the Big Bang. The energy density was just staggering. But the critical thing here is that this rapid expansion caused the fundamental forces to separate, to decouple from one another.
What do you mean by decouple?
I mean gravity, electromagnetism, and the strong and weak nuclear forces. They all split apart from a single unified force. That decoupling event determined how energy would condense, how it would interact, and how it would eventually spread out across the cosmos.
So it's like the moment the rules of the game for physics got finalized.
That's exactly. And as the universe inflated and cooled down, dramatically, that initial raw energy began to settle.
What did that look like? What was the state of matter when things finally slowed down enough for particles to even form?
As the temperature dropped, we enter what's called the Hadron epoch. This is around 10 to the minus 6 seconds. The environment was still incredibly energetic. I mean, temperatures that would instantly vaporize anything we can imagine. This was the famous quark-gluon plasma.
The cosmic soup.
The cosmic soup, precisely. In this high-energy state, quarks and gluons were just flying around freely. They couldn't combine into stable structures. Think of it like a gas under immense pressure. But once that pressure, the energy eased up enough, they condensed. They bound together into the first stable hadrons.
Which were mainly protons and neutrons.
Primarily protons and neutrons, yes. And these became the potential energy containers for all the matter that would ever exist.
Okay, so that consolidation of raw energy into the building blocks of matter, that sets the stage for the first real chemical event in the universe's history, right? Big Bang nucleosynthesis.
EDN, yeah. This is the absolute key to understanding where the first elements came from. It happened pretty quickly, spanning from about 10 milliseconds to maybe 20 minutes while temperatures were steadily cooling.
And it was a race against time, I imagine.
It was. The formation of the first atomic nuclei was this extremely delicate balance. The nuclear reaction rates had to be just right, happening fast enough to fuse nuclei together before the ongoing rapid expansion of the universe just diluted all the particles too much.
So if the universe had expanded just a little bit faster or maybe cooled a little bit slower, the whole elemental mix would be completely different.
Oh, absolutely. And we can see that perfectly illustrated by something called the deuterium bottleneck.
The deuterium bottleneck, what's that?
Well, for anything bigger to form, neutrons and protons first have to fuse to create deuterium, which is just a proton and a neutron stuck together. It's a crucial first step.
Okay.
But in the very early stages of BBN, the universe was still so hot, so energetic, that high-energy photons were constantly just blasting the deuterium nuclei apart the instant they formed.
It sounds like trying to weld something while someone is spraying it with a high-pressure fire hose.
That's a perfect analogy for the energy constraint. Nucleosynthesis was basically stuck in neutral. It could only really get going once the temperature dropped enough around the 4-minute mark for the deuterium to survive that constant photon bombardment.
And once it crossed that threshold,
The reaction just took off. It accelerated, quickly forming helium-3, the super stable helium-4, and then just trace amounts of lithium-7.
and this whole rapid energy-constrained process, it resulted in a very specific universal recipe for the elements.
It did. And this is the beautiful part. The standard model makes a specific, powerful, and most importantly, testable prediction. The result of BBN should be an elemental abundance of roughly 75% hydrogen and 25% helium by mass, everywhere.
And that's not a guess, it's a direct consequence of those early energy conditions.
It is a direct result of the energy conditions, the density, and the expansion rate. The fact that when we look at the most ancient, most pristine regions of the cosmos we can find, they align perfectly with that 75-25 ratio. I mean, that is one of the strongest experimental pillars supporting our entire understanding of cosmology.
It means we basically got the universe's first energy transactions right.
We did.
But that's just the foundational setting. This mix of light gases, hydrogen, and helium is incredibly boring, chemically speaking. To make literally everything else, we needed the next great energetic phase of the stellar engines.
This is the universe moving into its secondary phase of energy transformation. Over immense timescales, this primordial gas cloud started to collapse under their own gravity.
Right.
And as they gathered more and more mass, the internal pressure and heat became immense, high enough to overcome the natural electrostatic repulsion of hydrogen nuclei and kick off nuclear fusion. And that gave birth to the first generation of massive stars.
And this is where we finally get to bring in the most famous equation in physics, E equals mc squared.
Indeed. This is the core engine of a star. Stars work by fusing hydrogen into helium. When 4 hydrogen nuclei combine to form 1 helium nucleus, the final helium nucleus has just slightly less mass than the 4 protons that started the process.
Just a tiny fraction is lost.
A tiny, tiny fraction of mass. But it's converted directly into a massive amount of energy photons, which is light and neutrinos, all following that mass energy equivalence. And that constant outward blast of energy is what keeps the star inflated, perfectly balancing the immense inward crush of gravity.
But the truly amazing part, the part that's relevant to us, is that the biggest stars don't just stop at helium. They become literal cosmic factories.
They really do. The most massive stars continue this process in stages. It's called sequential synthesis. So as they use up the helium in their core, they contract and heat up even more and start fusing helium into carbon, then carbon into oxygen, neon, and so on.
Each stage requiring more heat and more pressure.
Exactly. Which means you need a bigger, hotter star to synthesize the elements further down the periodic table. And this whole process continues to be exothermic. It releases energy, keeping the star alive and stable.
Until they hit a wall. They hit iron.
Iron is the critical energetic dead end. It's the most stable element there is in terms of nuclear binding energy. So trying to fuse iron doesn't release energy. It actually consumes energy. It's an endothermic reaction.
So the star is suddenly running an energy deficit.
Precisely. When a massive star's core converts entirely to iron, the furnace at its heart just goes out. The core can no longer generate that outward pressure needed to support the rest of the star's immense weight, and gravity wins, instantly and catastrophically.
Which leads to the most violent and energetic events in the known universe.
A catastrophic gravitational collapse followed by a massive supernova explosion. And those supernovae, along with the later mergers of neutron stars, are the only environments in the universe energetic enough to drive what's called the R process rapid neutron capture.
Which is how you make the really heavy stuff?
It's how you forge the heaviest naturally occurring elements. We're talking about gold, platinum, uranium.
You know, I just want to pause on that for a second. If the star runs out of energy at iron and then it has to explode to make gold, it means the only reason something like gold exists is because the star failed?
That's a beautiful observation. The synthesis of these high-value elements required the catastrophic termination of the stellar engine.
It's an incredible consequence. And it all comes back to us, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, to really emphasize the scale of this, every single atom in your body, the oxygen you're breathing right now, the carbon that makes up your tissues, the iron that carry oxygen in your blood, every single one is a relic of these high-energy cosmic events, forged either in the core of a star or in the cataclysm of its death.
We are literally built from and powered by this cosmic engine. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting for me. If the entire universe runs on these massive energy transformations, what does that mean for the most complex system we know? Life itself, operating on this tiny, microscopic, cellular scale.
Well, the moment you transition from cosmic physics to biology, you immediately have to confront the second law of thermodynamics.
Right, the rule that says everything tends toward disorder or entropy.
Exactly. The total entropy in a closed system has to always increase. And on the surface, this seems to just fundamentally conflict with life, which is, characterized by these highly ordered, incredibly complex structures.
We create order, we build brains, we maintain this incredible complexity. So how does life get away with not violating this ultimate rule?
It's a great question. And the answer is that life doesn't violate the rule. It just operates around it by being what we call an open thermodynamic system.
Meaning it's not a closed box.
Exactly. Life maintains this remarkable internal order. It's low entropy, only by constantly importing high-quality energy and exporting high-entropy waste or disorder back out into its surroundings. We consume organized matter, we use its concentrated energy to do work, and we inevitably dissipate that energy as low-quality heat.
So just being alive is a constant process of fighting against that natural decay toward equilibrium, a state which is death. We're basically paying a constant entropy tax.
That's the perfect term for it, an entropy tax. If the energy flow stops, the system decays into disorder incredibly quickly. And to pay that tax, life on this planet relies almost exclusively on one source.
The sun.
The sun. Solar radiation is the primary energy input for the entire biosphere.
And plants are the gatekeepers. They're the essential transducers that convert that solar energy into something usable.
Photosynthetic organisms, plants, algae, cyanobacteria, they are the planet's biochemical engineers. They have figured out how to convert chaotic, radiant solar energy into stable, organized chemical energy that can be stored and then used by the rest of the food web.
Let's unpack that process a little more, because it really is the ultimate clean energy factory.
It all begins with what are called the light-dependent reactions. Chlorophyll molecules act like these incredibly precise antennae, absorbing specific wavelengths of photons. That captured energy immediately goes to work splitting water molecules, H2O.
And that releases oxygen as a byproduct.
As a waste product, yes, which is convenient for us. But the main event is the generation of high-energy electrons. These electrons are then passed down an electron transport chain, which generates the cell's main short-term energy carriers, ATP and NADPH.
And the second stage, the Calvin cycle. That's the heavy construction phase. That's turning gas from the air into solid food.
It's the ultimate carbon fixation process. The ATP and NADPH, that energy currency that was generated in the first stage, they provide the power to incorporate atmospheric carbon dioxide, CO2, into a complex sugar molecule, glucose.
C6H12O6.
That's the one. So conceptually, they are taking energy from light and matter from the air and using it to build these stable, edible chemical bonds. This single cycle is the energetic foundation of nearly all the complexity we see on Earth.
But once we, as heterotrophs, eat that glucose, it's still just stored energy. We need something more immediate, like flexible cash to move a muscle or think a thought. How does the cell manage that transaction?
Right, that stored energy in the glucose or lipids has to be released in a very controlled way through what are called catabolic pathways. The cell doesn't want a sudden combustion. It wants a regulated withdrawal from the bank.
And the central vault for that energy is ATP, adenosine triphosphate.
We always hear ATP called the energy currency of the cell, and it's really the perfect analogy.
Why is it so special?
It's all about its chemical structure. When the cell needs to drive a reaction that requires energy like building a protein or firing a nerve impulse, it just performs hydrolysis on the ATP molecule. It cleaves off that third phosphate group.
Turning ATP into ADP, adenosine diphosphate.
Exactly. And that simple act of breaking that one bond releases a very specific, very reliable amount of energy. About minus 7.3 kilocalories per mole under standard conditions.
So it's like the ultimate standard rate of exchange for the cell.
You can think of it like a central bank setting a base interest rate for its entire economy. It's this highly reliable, energy-releasing reaction that can be coupled to other reactions to make them suddenly energetically possible.
And the sources give us a really detailed breakdown of how efficient we are at actually extracting that energy from food.
Yes, and it's a multi-tiered process. The first step is glycolysis. You can think of this as the cell's emergency budget. It happens without oxygen, it's very fast, but it's brutally inefficient.
How inefficient?
From 1 molecule of glucose, the net yield is only 2 molecules of ATP. Just 2. It's enough to keep essential functions running in a pinch, but not much more.
But the big efficiency jump comes when oxygen is available and the products of glycolysis can move into the mitochondria.
That's where the full cellular economy really kicks in. The next phase is the citric acid cycle, or the Krebs cycle. It only makes about 2 ATP directly, but its main job is to strip all the remaining energetic potential from the organic molecules, generating a massive number of electron carriers, NADH and FADH2.
And those are like the high-value bonds waiting to be cashed in.
They are. And the final transaction is the big one, aerobic respiration. This is the massive payoff. Those carriers, NADH and FADH2, deliver their high-energy electrons to the electron transport chain, which uses oxygen as the final acceptor.
And this generates a ton of ATP.
A stunning amount. That chain powers an enzyme that churns out somewhere between 32 and 34 molecules of ATP per original glucose molecule. This entire oxygen-powered system is what makes complex life, human endurance, and everything we do possible.
But if we run out of oxygen, say during a really intense sprint, we have to revert back to that emergency budget.
Yes, that's when lactic acid fermentation takes over. Without oxygen, the whole aerobic system just shuts down. The cell falls back on glycolysis, it converts its pyruvate into lactate to keep things going, and it can only generate that meager 2 ATP total per glucose. It's fast, but it's completely unsustainable.
Speaking of sustainability, humans have evolved to operate at this incredibly high energetic level. We just burn hotter and faster than other primates.
We really do. We've evolved an exceptionally high total energy expenditure, or TE, and that's necessary to support our energy-guzzling large brains, which, by the way, consume about 20% of our resting energy, along with our high reproductive rates and our extended longevity.
The sources mention a trade-off that most mammals face.
Right. Most mammals face a strict trade-off. You can either invest energy heavily in maintenance and survival, or you can invest it in high levels of activity. It's hard to do both.
But we found a way around that.
We did. Our unique thermoregulatory adaptations, mainly our ability to sweat and dissipate heat so efficiently, allowed early hominids to engage in persistence hunting, running down prey during the hottest parts of the day. This adaptation allows us to maintain that high energy expenditure even during demanding activity, which secured the high-calorie food needed to fuel our big brains. We bypass the typical constraint.
But this high metabolic rate, this engine that's always running hot, it comes with an ultimate unavoidable cost, doesn't it? Aging and death.
Yes. The old rate of living theory, while a bit simplistic, it captures a core truth. The faster you run your engine, the more wear and tear you're going to accumulate. And the concrete mechanism for this is the free radical theory of aging.
Okay.
Our super efficient engine, that oxidative phosphorylation in the mitochondria, produces these things called reactive oxygen species, or ROS, as an inevitable byproduct.
So are the ROS like the toxic exhaust fumes from our cellular engines? Is that a fair way to think about it?
That is a perfect way to think about it. They are highly reactive molecules. And over a lifetime, these free radicals just cause this cumulative damage. They oxidize and destroy your DNA, your proteins, the lipids that make up your cell membranes.
And that progressive decay is what we call aging.
It leads to cellular senescence and, yes, the aging process.
And death, then, is the ultimate thermodynamic surrender.
It is the final transition dictated by the second law of thermodynamics. When the organism can no longer maintain that necessary energy input and export of disorder, it yields to equilibrium. The body transitions from a state of low entropy to one of rapidly rising entropy.
The decay of temperature, the disorganization of tissues.
It's all just the physical manifestation of the system moving towards balance with its environment.
But the energy and the materials aren't truly lost, are they? They just re-enter the cosmic economy.
That's what we could call biochemical reincarnation. Decomposition, which is driven by bacteria and fungi, breaks down all those highly organized molecules. It releases the stored chemical energy and matter back into the system, mainly as heat and CO2.
And then plants can grab that CO2 out of the air.
And photosynthetic plants recapture it, use solar energy to rebuild those chemical bonds, and continue the cycle. The circle of life is, at its most fundamental level, a perfectly circular energy economy.
So we've seen how energy dictates the cosmos and the cell. Now, let's zoom out to civilization. The sources make a really strong case that human progress is defined less by our philosophy and more by our success in externalizing energy.
Externalizing, yeah. Moving beyond the hard constraints of our own biological muscle power to literally reshape the planet.
That's the great differentiator for our species.
It really is. Every major leap in society corresponds directly to harnessing a new form of energy. Our biological limits are strict, but our social limits are really just based on how much energy we can capture and direct.
And the earliest transition was fire, about 2 million years ago.
The mastery of fire by our ancestor Homo erectus was completely revolutionary. It wasn't just about warmth or safety. It was an external energy tool that fundamentally changed our own metabolism.
How so?
By allowing for the external digestion of food cooking, we dramatically increased the amount of usable caloric energy we could get from our diet.
So we got more output for less internal effort.
Precisely. Cooking reduced the huge amount of energy we had to spend on chewing and digesting tough foods. That spared metabolic energy was then free to be reallocated, and evolutionary anthropologists have a very strong argument that this energy surplus was crucial for supporting the development of a much larger, more complex, and very energetically expensive brain.
It was a net thermodynamic gain that made us smarter.
In essence, yes.
Okay, let's fast forward to the Neolithic Revolution, after 10,000 BCE. We learned to capture and store solar energy, not just in our own bodies, but in the landscape itself.
Right. The domestication of plants and animals allowed societies to intentionally create and manage energy surpluses for the first time. This was energy stored in grain, as chemical energy, and in the mechanical power of livestock.
And for thousands of years, that was basically it.
For millennia, these sources, supplemented by the direct mechanical energy from water wheels and wind wheels, they powered civilization. It was low-density power, tied to the annual solar flux, but it was enough to enable permanent settlements and large-scale social organization.
Then came the moment that changed the geopolitical map of the world forever. The Industrial Revolution. And this was the fundamental shift from relying on the annual solar flux to exploiting millions of years of stored energy stock.
And that distinction between flux and stock is probably the most important concept in energy history. Flux is renewable, but it's limited in its density and how fast you can capture it.
Like sunshine or wind.
Exactly. Stock fossil fuels is dense, it's portable, and it represents this enormous accumulation of stored solar energy from eons ago. This shift allowed humanity to access energy at a rate that just dwarfed any natural biological or solar-based flux.
And coal was the first globally dominant stock.
Yes, the widespread industrial use of coal really took off in Europe around 1690. It was largely accelerated because of local wood depletion, which made a more centralized, denser fuel necessary.
And it powered the steam engine.
It powered the steam engine, which provided rotary mechanical power far beyond anything water or muscle could achieve. By 1883, the total energy that we got from burning coal had globally surpassed the energy we got from burning biomass. And that marks the definitive start of the industrial era. It fueled the factories, the urbanization, the locomotives, the steamships, everything.
The next phase was oil, which offered even higher energy density, perfect for mobility.
Oil came along in the mid-19th century. Its fluid nature and its incredible energy density were just perfectly suited for transport. Carl Benz's gasoline-powered motor car in 1885 rapidly globalized transportation.
And this era also saw electricity emerge.
Yes, the parallel emergence of electricity as this essential, high-quality secondary energy carrier. It was a way to deliver energy generated from coal or oil efficiently across huge distances, starting with Thomas Edison's first central power plant back in 1880.
This energy externalization model didn't just build cities and cars. It radically restructured the most basic human activity of all, how we grow food.
Modern agriculture is often called a socio-ecological transition for this very reason. It transformed what were ecological limitations into industrial processes, and it is incredibly energy intensive.
In what ways?
It requires massive imports of fossil fuels in 3 critical areas. First, for synthetic fertilizers. Second, for the diesel that powers all the mechanized machinery. And third, for the electricity or gas needed for high-volume irrigation pumping.
And the paradox, as the sources point out, is that we often end up using more fossil fuel energy input than the food energy we get as an output.
That's the core tension, isn't it? On one hand, the impact has been phenomenal. This model has driven a 33 to 45% increase in the energy productivity of landscapes. It feeds billions of people. But the trade-off is this deep dependency. We're exchanging long-term energy sustainability for immediate, very high yields.
Let's get into some of the specific data on that dependency.
Okay, take maize or corn. Farmers are achieving a 5 to 10 times yield increase compared to traditional methods, but this is directly attributable to nitrogenous fertilizers. And the production of ammonia for those fertilizers relies on the Haber-Bosch process, which is immensely energy intensive and requires huge inputs of fossil gas or natural gas.
So there's a direct line from the natural gas supply chain to the corn on our plates.
A direct global dependency. Now look at wheat. Mechanized harvesting has driven an estimated 20-fold increase in labor efficiency. That massive productivity gain relies entirely on diesel fuel for the combines and tractors. If the price of diesel spikes or the supply is disrupted, the global wheat supply is immediately in jeopardy.
Yeah, rice.
With rice, yields in many areas are up by about 3 times due to modern irrigation and pumping. But that requires huge inputs of electricity or diesel to pull groundwater up to the surface. The whole agricultural system is now completely intertwined with the fossil fuel system.
And this inherent dependency brings us right into the modern geopolitical reality, what the sources call the energy trilemma.
Right. Policymakers are constantly being forced to balance 3 simultaneous and often competing needs: energy security, energy equity, and environmental sustainability. The core tension is that when you pursue one of these goals, you often have to compromise on another.
Can you walk us through how that tension has played out historically?
Sure. Think about the 1973 oil embargo. OPEC cut the supply, which triggered massive price shocks. That event immediately elevated energy security, just having a reliable supply, to the top of every national agenda.
And that often came at the expense of the environment.
It often led to decisions like prioritizing domestic coal mining or a big nuclear build-out, regardless of the immediate environmental sustainability cost.
And we saw that play out again very recently, didn't we?
Absolutely. The geopolitical fragmentation from the 2022 invasion of Ukraine forced many European nations to rapidly secure alternative gas supplies. This meant, in the short term, increasing coal use and delaying some climate targets. When the supply is threatened, security almost always wins out over sustainability.
And it often forces compromises on the third component, which is equity.
Yes. There's this undeniable correlation between high per capita energy use and measures of human welfare, life expectancy, literacy rates, all of it. But the inequality is just stark. Over 1 billion people are still energy poor. They lack access to reliable electricity, and that profoundly limits their ability to improve their own welfare.
Now, as we're trying to transition to renewables, solar, wind, batteries, we're not getting rid of geopolitical risk. We seem to just be shifting the focus from oil pipelines to critical minerals.
It's a complete restructuring of global power dynamics. The transition substitutes the geological abundance of petroleum in a few regions for the geographic concentration of minerals in other regions, and this creates entirely new supply chain vulnerabilities and dependencies.
Let's nail down that concentration with some of the data from the sources.
Okay, so let's start with lithium. It's absolutely essential for EV batteries. Australia and Chile alone account for about 50% of the global refined share. Any disruption in just those 2 countries has immediate global effects on the EV transition.
And what about something more challenging, like cobalt?
Cobalt is vital for battery cathodes. Here, the concentration is even more extreme. The Democratic Republic of Congo accounts for around 70% of the world's refined global share. This creates huge ethical and supply chain pressures for nearly every major tech and auto company in the world.
And for the backbone of renewable generation itself, for wind turbines, we need rare earths.
Yes, rare earths are necessary for the powerful magnets in wind turbines, and China controls about 85% of the refined global share of these materials. That gives one nation enormous leverage over the speed and security of the entire global green energy transition.
And it doesn't stop there.
No. Graphite, which is used for battery anodes, also sees China controlling about 65% of the global supply. The sources are really clear on this. The new era of geopolitics is defined by mineral concentration and the resilience of these new supply chains.
Okay, we've gone from the elemental forge of a star to the modern power grid. Now we have to enter the most abstract realm yet. Information, communication, even thought itself. It feels counterintuitive to think of something like communication as having an energetic cost, but it absolutely does.
It does, because everything physical involves an energy transfer, and information transmission is fundamentally a physical process. You can see this clearly in something like costly signaling theory.
Okay, what's that?
Whether we're talking about animal behavior or complex human politics, signals like a big display of wealth or a demonstration of commitment, they have to be energetically expensive, to be honest.
Oh, expensive.
Because if a signal were cheap to produce, individuals with conflicting interests could just fake it easily. The signal would lose all its meaning, all its reliability. The energy expenditure is the guarantee of honesty.
So if I want to communicate that I'm trustworthy, I have to spend substantial resources, energy, to back that claim up.
Exactly. And this principle of energetic efficiency is baked so deeply into our systems that it's even in the structure of human language itself.
Which brings us to linguistic entropy and this surprising regularity called Zipf's law.
Zipf's law basically quantifies the principle of least effort in communication. Language has to strike this perfect energetic balance. The speaker wants to minimize their effort of production, while the listener wants to minimize their effort of comprehension.
And the frequency of words optimizes that trade-off.
It does. Zipf observed that the frequency of any given word is inversely proportional to its rank. So the most common words like the or and are used constantly. They're very short, they convey very little information on their own, but they streamline the basic structure.
And the more complex words.
Complex, unique words are used rarely, but they carry massive amounts of information. This whole structure is a profound energetic optimization strategy. It minimizes the total energy needed for transmitting information while still maintaining the vocabulary richness we need for complex ideas.
And the most complex energetic system we know, the human brain, can itself be explained by an energy optimization strategy, the social brain hypothesis.
The neural tissue in our brain is just metabolically astonishingly expensive to maintain. A larger, more complex brain requires a significantly higher and more stable net energy intake to support that metabolic burden.
So how does living in a social group help pay that massive energy bill?
Social group formation is an adaptive strategy to optimize how we acquire resources. By hunting or farming collectively, by sharing knowledge and labor, individuals minimize the risks and the physical energy they have to spend finding food and staying safe on their own.
So the energy saved through that collective intelligence helps pay for the cost of having a big brain.
In a way, yes. Intelligence in this context is simply the most thermodynamically efficient way to survive.
But when we move from biological intelligence to the computational kind, to AI, we run headfirst into a hard physical constraint, the thermodynamics of computation. And this is where information stops being abstract and becomes purely physically real.
This is a fundamental concept for the entire AI era. Information processing, storage, transmission, it's all constrained by the physical laws of energy. And the foundational principle here is Landauer's principle.
Okay, I've heard of this. What does Landauer's principle actually state?
It was established by Rolf Landauer back in 1961, and it states that any logically irreversible operation, which means any operation where you can't reconstruct the previous state from the current one, must result in a minimum amount of heat being dissipated into the environment.
And the simplest example is just erasing a bit of information.
Exactly. When you delete a file, you are destroying information, and that act of destruction must necessarily generate waste heat.
Okay, hold on. You're saying deleting a file on my computer actually creates a tiny, tiny puff of heat in the real world.
That's the fundamental physical reality, yes. It's unavoidable. There is a theoretical minimum energy cost for that deletion.
And we know what that is.
We do. The formula is a bit complex, but at room temperature, that theoretical limit is minuscule, about 2.9 times 10 to the minus 21 joules. It's the smallest possible amount of energy required to perform a computation.
So we have this ultimate theoretical minimum. Where are modern computers running on silicon chips in relation to that limit?
We are operating in a state of just drastic inefficiency. Modern silicon-based computers are roughly 1 billion times less efficient than the Landauer limit.
1 billion times.
1 billion times. They require vast amounts of extra energy for heat management, for switching, for leakage, all things that theoretical physics doesn't demand. And that massive efficiency gap explains the huge power consumption of modern technology.
And this gap becomes critically relevant when we contrast it with our own 20-watt champion, the human brain.
The brain is the ultimate efficiency machine. It runs consciousness, problem-solving, sensory integration, all on the power equivalent of a dim light bulb, about 20 watts.
And compared to an AI.
Contrast that with the energy needed to train a modern AI model. Running a single high-end GPU cluster for that training requires nearly 5,000 times that amount of power.
Let's break down the data to see the real cost.
Okay. The human brain runs at about 20 watts. Its architecture is sparse. Neurons only fire or spike when they're needed. It's event-driven. Now look at a model like GPT-4. The total energy required just for the training phase is estimated to be around 50 gigawatt hours.
50 gigawatt hours. That's enough to power thousands of homes for a year.
Just to train the model. And then the inference phase, just performing a single ChatGPT query that consumes about 2.9 watt hours, which is 10 times the energy cost of a standard Google search. It's a huge amount of energy for one abstract question.
And the inefficiency comes from the architecture.
Primarily. Modern AI hardware runs on parallel continuous voltage. It's constantly drawing power whether every part is actively computing or not. And this is why the cutting edge of research is so focused on something called neuromorphic computing,
which is designed to mimic the brain's incredible efficiency.
The goal of neuromorphic hardware is to replicate that sparse, event-driven signaling. Instead of continuous voltage, the chip components only consume energy when an event, a spike, actually occurs. If it's successful, this architectural redesign is our most promising path toward truly sustainable, low-power AI.
So AI is this massive energy consumer, but it's also simultaneously the most indispensable tool we have for achieving a sustainable global energy system. It's a true dual-edged sword.
We have to leverage its profound ability as an optimizer. AI algorithms are just fantastic at modeling and managing complexity, which is exactly what our modern energy systems are drowning in.
Give us some tangible examples of that optimization at work.
In the power grid, AI is essential for managing smart grids. As we add more and more intermittent renewables, solar and wind AI can accurately forecast production and simultaneously manage real-time demand across thousands of homes and businesses. This dramatically cuts waste and is critical for preventing blackouts.
And an industry where so much energy is wasted.
Right. In industrial settings, AI-driven predictive maintenance can service components only when they're needed. Process optimization algorithms can fine-tune temperature and pressure in real time. The evidence shows this can lead to energy consumption reductions of up to 50%.
The huge constant energy demands of these AI data centers, which can't tolerate even a second of downtime, has led to this major strategic alliance the sources highlight, the Atoms for Algorithms Alliance.
This partnership is really defining the future infrastructure of high-tech economies. Hyperscale data centers need 247 uninterrupted, low-carbon power. Renewables alone, because they're intermittent, just can't guarantee that level of stability.
And that's driving them towards nuclear.
This acute need is driving major tech companies to proactively invest in small modular reactors, or SMRs, and other advanced fission designs.
Why SMRs specifically?
They're smaller, they're standardized, they can be deployed more quickly, and located right next to the point of demand, like a massive data center complex. This alliance ensures that digital growth is powered by a stable, low-carbon source, aligning our digital expansion with climate goals instead of contradicting them.
And AI is also actively accelerating the development of the ultimate energy source, controlled nuclear fusion.
Fusion is the holy grail, isn't it? The process that powers the stars. The challenge is managing the incredibly hot, turbulent plasma inside these fusion devices. It's a problem with millions of variables.
Too complex for humans to solve quickly.
But not for an AI. Its ability to run millions of simulations modeling that turbulent behavior far faster than any human scientist could is helping to solve critical engineering problems. It's shaving years off the development timeline, and it raises the very real possibility that we could see fusion power entering the grid by the 2030s.
Okay, so if the trajectory of civilization is defined by externalizing energy, then the ultimate expression of that ambition has to be astroengineering scaling our energy consumption beyond the confines of a single planet.
This is where we get into the realm of the Kardashev scale. It's a metric that measures a civilization's technological advancement based entirely on the total amount of energy it can harness.
And we, as a planetary civilization, are currently estimated to be somewhere around a type 0.7. So the first major step beyond that is achieving Type 2 status.
A Type 2 civilization is defined as one that's capable of harnessing the total energy output of its host star. For us, that means capturing and using the full output of the sun.
And the mechanism for doing that is the famous Dyson structure.
The original idea of the Dyson sphere was a solid shell around the star, which is, well, it's structurally problematic. The more plausible design is the Dyson swarm, a vast distributed lattice or cloud of independent solar collectors all orbiting the star, forming a kind of shell of energy harvesters.
What kind of power are we even talking about with something like that?
Yeah. The scale is it's hard to grasp. The sun radiates about 3.8 times 10 to the 26 watts of power. Harvesting just 1% of that would provide enough energy to support a population many, many orders of magnitude larger than we have now. It would enable massive interstellar colonization. It would basically guarantee energy perpetuity.
And what if that civilization decided that the most important thing to do with all that infinite stellar power wasn't colonization, but pure abstract thought?
That leads to one of the most provocative thought experiments in all of futurism, the Matryoshka brain.
A brain nested like Russian dolls.
Exactly. A hypothetical nested set of Dyson spheres layers within layers, designed not for habitation, but exclusively for hyperscale computation and artificial consciousness.
And how does the nesting help with the energy problem?
It's a masterpiece of applied thermodynamics.
Yeah.
The innermost layer processes data at incredible speed, which generates a lot of heat, right? Following Landauer's principle. It then re-radiates that waste heat to the next outer layer. That layer then uses that heat as its energy source for its own slightly slower, slightly cooler computation. And then it radiates its waste heat out to the next layer, and so on.
Maximizing the efficiency at every step.
It maximizes the total thermodynamic efficiency of converting a star's entire energy profile into continuous computation.
So the ultimate goal of an advanced civilization, according to this model, is to convert the entire colossal energy output of a star into a single giant thinking machine.
It suggests a future where organized consciousness AI is the ultimate manifestation of energy organization, where thinking and processing information become the primary mode of being.
To even begin moving toward that kind of future, we would have to fundamentally reject our current planetary energy model.
Completely. We have to transition from our current linear paradigm, extract, burn, waste, to a genuinely circular energy economy. This shift requires that we mimic the principles of efficiency we see in biology.
This means adopting principles like biomimetic optimization.
It means our future energy systems need to be designed to function like the efficient systems we see in nature. Highly decentralized, interconnected, smart grids that operate like neural networks, routing energy with minimal loss based on real-time, local needs, instead of relying on massive, brittle, centralized power plants.
And we need a fundamental shift in our metrics.
Yeah.
Away from just maximizing raw power consumption.
Absolutely. The focus has to shift from pure wattage to prioritizing intelligence per watt. This is the key to achieving what's called information energy decoupling.
Separating the growth of processing power from the growth of energy use.
Exactly. And that demands we transition toward carbon neutral, neuromorphic hardware, and ultimately pursue things like reversible computing, which is at the theoretical endpoint where computation gets as close as possible to that Landauer limit of near zero energy waste.
In the immediate future, though, the synthesis seems to rely on this unavoidable hybrid approach to maintain stability.
The Atoms for Algorithms Alliance is going to be the backbone of the next few decades. To support the data centers and the industry we need, while also meeting our climate commitments, humanity is going to require nuclear fission, and eventually fusion, to serve as that stable, uninterrupted, low-carbon foundation for a grid that's also heavily reliant on renewables. #tech outro. So, to synthesize this whole deep dive, the concept of energy really is the single, non-negotiable thread that links every single level of existence. We've tracked its transformation from primordial nucleosynthesis, constrained by these delicate energy ratios,
to the cell's constant fight against entropy by paying that metabolic tax.
and finally all the way to the thermodynamic constraints on information itself, governed by Landauer's principle.
The relevance for you, listening to this, is just profound. Understanding this flow of energy illuminates every major crisis and every major opportunity facing humanity. Leveraging tools like AI to understand and manage these complex trade-offs between security, sustainability, and the pure power demands of computation. That's what will determine our ability to transition from a single planetary species to a cosmic one.
The universe is constantly challenging us to optimize our energy use. Civilization is simply our grandest attempt to meet that challenge.
And ultimately, humanity's goal is to ensure that the light of consciousness, powered by the efficient currency of the stars, continues to illuminate the universe.
Yeah.
But I want to leave you with one final challenging thought to really mull over. If intelligence becomes the ultimate organizational form of energy, and we know that we are still 1 billion times less efficient than the theoretical Landauer limit for computation, what fundamental physical breakthrough, beyond just designing smarter hardware like neuromorphic chips, would be required to truly close that efficiency gap?
That's a big question.
If the Matryoshka brain represents 100% efficiency, and we're still at, what, 0.0000001% efficiency today, what physical law do we have to truly master to unlock the energy potential needed for a Type 3, a galactic civilization? We'll leave you to ponder the cosmic math.
Thank you for joining us for the AI podcast at DigitView.
We hope this episode gave you valuable insights into research AI.
This is DigitView.